Hello and welcome to the Surgical Spirit podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Haidar Al-Hakim, the Third Eye Doctor. Pull up a chair and get ready for some candid and uncompromising discussion with experts, innovators, agitators, and influential people from every corner of health and well-being. From inside the hospital to at home in the kitchen, we're leaving no stone unturned in our quest to uncover the secrets of healthier, happier, more successful, and less stressful lives. Thank you so much for joining us, and without further ado, let's meet this episode's guest. Hello Abdullah, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Haidar. Thanks for having me.
No, it's a great pleasure. You've done a lot in your life, I must say, and you're working in your junior job. Where was your junior job? Where were you working?
So mine is quite a convoluted route. So I graduated from Imperial, completing medicine. I worked as an F1, F2 in Lancashire in Royal Preston. Then I came back to London to continue my passion to be a surgeon. I was destined to be an ENT surgeon. London really made me reflect on my life choices. And I decided I didn't want to be a surgeon any longer. So I started my GP training back in Leeds.
Why do you say that? What's wrong with London? What's wrong with being a surgeon?
I found I didn't have the right balance I was after. It was all or nothing. And I think for people involved in the medical field, or those who are involved in surgery, or those who are involved in surgery in London, will probably appreciate that it has to be all or nothing. There was always a competitive environment, which I found unhealthy. I'm always keen to compete, and I'm always keen to try to be the best version that I can be. But there was definitely a lot of trying to put your fellow man down, which I didn't think was quite healthy.
That's amazing, Abdullah. It took me 10 years to figure that one out. I was too stubborn to leave that, but I knew it was affecting me badly in terms of my well-being. So props to you, mate, for deciding that so early.
It's very toxic. It's not toxic in a bad way. I mean, it's toxic in a kind of, it's potent. You want to be this person. You want to be this character. You want to be this hot shot.
Yeah.
And you enjoy it. Especially, for example, I know I was making my family immensely proud. And the decision I made when I said I'm going to switch to GP now instead. I know it upset my father. It's
amazing. It's amazing. And for me, I think I sort of stuck at it, being in that. Toxic is a big word, but internal toxicity. Let's say internal toxicity. It's not who I am. But I stuck at it because of my family, because of my father, particularly my mother. My mother had a massive influence in my life, and I kind of did it for her. And then one day I thought, fuck this, I've had enough of this. I can't carry on. I've got to be myself, and I've got to just look elsewhere. I didn't know what to do. I mean, why did you sort of leave surgery and go to GP? Because it was a better balance, you said.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been fortunate enough during my surgical training, and before that, I used to work as an A&E doctor a lot on the side as well, and I worked to a middle grade level. So I realised that it gave me the opportunity to realise that it's not just the surgery that I like doing. I genuinely like helping patients with all of their problems, be it mental health problems, be it simple medical problems, and the surgical side was always my calling, if you will. But I realised it's not sustainable for me. And when I got married, I realised I liked spending more time at home with my wife than I realised. And being in theatre, for example, we would be doing a thyroidectomy, so an operation to remove the thyroid or a part of the thyroid. And the consultant might have made a complication. He might have nicked an artery. And normally as a trainee, you're meant to be absolutely buzzing. You're like, oh, this is brilliant. I'm going to see, how the consultant's going to get around this. I'm going to learn from this experience. Whereas my mindset was completely different. It was like, oh, we're going to be here for another few hours now because we have to get around this. And I realized that's not the right attitude, because to be a surgeon, and I have the most respect for people that have pursued this kind of career, it is a true dedication, and I suppose this kind of realization of what people go through is a big motivation in everything I do in medicine, how I practice it, and in how I approach life as well, to appreciate what people have sacrificed to get to what they've got.
That's an amazing self-realization. No, I was a stubborn bastard. It's like, I'm going to stick with this. But I knew from such an early time that, surgery wasn't for me, because I love getting home, and I love just spending time with the family and kids. And I had that constant nagging in sort of the head and the heart. You have to be out there in the wet lab doing all these different maneuvers and procedures and so on, and everyone else was doing it, and I must say, everyone else was super dedicated, and I did feel a bit guilty and sort of torn between two worlds, the world of the family and the world of the work, and I couldn't find that balance, and I was just too stubborn not to leave the profession, the surgical conveyor belt, early enough. I think maybe it's the Iraqi blood, stubbornness.
Yeah, possibly. Maybe you're a bit more Iraqi than I am.
Right. Yeah.
I'm both my parents are Iraqi, and I'm proud to be Iraqi. Of course, I've got an Iraqi football shirt and everything. And I used to go back to Baghdad all the time when I was younger, until the war happened, of course. But no, I think more so than the Iraqi, it's about trying to make my parents proud. And I think that's a strong driver throughout life. And when I told my dad, like, I'm going into GP, like in his like Iraqi broken English accent, he's like, "But my son is a surgeon." I was like, "Yeah, Dad, I still am. Like, I passed my postgraduate examinations, and I want you to realize this is out of a choice. This is not out of me not, reaching that bar. The doors were open in front of me. But I think I can do more with being a GP, more for myself and more for my patients than I'm doing being a surgeon, because I think what surgery made me realize is that there's a huge disconnect between doctors and patients. We don't fully appreciate all the things they're going through, and they certainly don't appreciate all the things we've gone through to be there at their service. And the amount of experiences, like anecdotes, I mean, I'm sure you have millions of them yourself, but one that I always tell people about is when I was so part of my surgical training, I had to do a max fax stint, so maxillofacial surgery. That they're basically half dentists, half surgeons. They're extremely hardcore people because they've got 2 degrees. And there was this very big surgical case where the patient's jaw and upper teeth, if you will, they don't align properly, and they've been wearing braces for 18 months just to get their teeth in the right position, waiting for this day of surgery to have a 2-hour procedure to break the jaw, if you will, and align it now with how the teeth are. And we couldn't find the patient's notes. And this patient has, 18 months of braces, taken time off work, planned their sick note with their recovery time coming up, all their family around their bedside, and we're there 8 o'clock in the morning about to cancel this procedure. And what the patient doesn't realize is I was in the secretary's office climbing through mountains of notes with the anaesthetist in my ear saying, "Have you found the notes yet or not? Because we can't start." What should have happened is obviously the surgical nurses or the reception desk would have already had all the notes ready in the recovery area waiting. So every patient we're about to take surgery, we have a look at their notes and then take them in. They couldn't find these notes. No one really bothered trying to find them in the end, and just thought, we'll just cancel the surgery. And what the patients don't realize is the extent we go to make sure things happen for them. So that was really, a profound moment when I thought there's a complete disconnect here. It's not the idea that I want thanks for this, but it's the idea that, these members of our NHS or these kind of teams are working that hard and that flat out, that there's a disconnect between the patients knowing what we have to do in order for them to get what they get, and vice versa.
And the politics and the media don't help. But let's not go there. did that sort of confirm the need to have this electronic or this sort of seamless approach of having the information there for the patient and for the surgeon to be the most efficient service out there with MedicalChain, or did it start earlier?
I think it's not a new idea. I think you could have gone 20, 30 years back, and any doctor would have said to you, I wish I had access to the records. I wish it was digitized. So it's not, I can't claim, it's some brilliance on my part. I think it's always been a frustration of mine, because when you meet the patient, it's not like the patient doesn't want you to know this information. And especially less so in my surgical experience, more in my A&E experience. When I'm seeing patients, I'm trying to treat them with some antibiotics, and the patient will tell me, I'm allergic to something. I don't remember what it was, but my GP knows. And in my head, well, that doesn't help me.
Yeah.
I can't see a GP's records, and I'm now playing Russian roulette with which antibiotics to give you.
Yeah.
Now, at the same time, it's not the patient's fault. If a plumber came to my house and asked me, so what's the millimeters of the pipes you're using? Are they lead? Are they PVC? So look, I really don't know. You're the plumber. I'm just the consumer here.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same with patients. So there's always been this irritation, if you will, this problem we've been trying to solve. On my small scale, so before I made MedicalChain, I made a website called dischargesummary.co.uk. I don't know if you've had a chance to see it, Haidar.
I've had a quick look, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, essentially it's a very simple template or pro forma, but I was trying to improve the communication between hospitals, GPs and patients, because when a patient enters a system, they're entering the hospital, they're given a diagnosis, they've had certain investigations, certain treatments, and then they come out the other end, and there needs to be a summary of that whole journey, which is shared with the GP. So the GP knows what to continue in terms of medications or what blood tests they should repeat. And for the patient's sake to obviously have a record of what occurred there. And the standard of this discharge summary is so variable. And again, I experienced this during my GP training when I was in the cardiology rotation here in Leeds, where somebody's had a panic attack, or they've had a bit of acid reflux. They've come to the cardiology department, and one of the junior doctors has written 4 pages to describe this person's anxiety, which is for the GP very unhelpful, because they're trying to find which bit is relevant for them. And for the hospital consultant, it's very unhelpful, because they don't realize, well, what were the tests, investigations, how do we get to that conclusion? And for the patient as well, they're not taking a message away from that. And then on the flip side, somebody's had a very complex heart attack, which needed lots of intervention, and somebody's written 4 lines. And the GP has no idea, what we're meant to continue with, and vice versa. So I made this dischargesummary.co.uk. I rolled it out in Leeds in the cardiology department. I then made further templates for care of the elderly, which happened in University of Lewisham Hospital in London and in Woolwich. And essentially I got approached by a pharmaceutical company. And the pharmaceutical company said, we like what you're doing here. We can see that it's a better way of standardizing a discharge summary, which means it's easier for the GP to realize which bit they're working on, easier for the hospital consultant to design, really make it unique for their department of what they'd expect to see in their discharge summary, and good for the patient as well. We'd like to purchase this from you, if you will. So I'd never had this motivation of business. This is not the reason I did it. It was completely for free, and it was just a tool that I was trying to help other junior doctors in my position use. So I spoke to my co-founder, Mohammed Tayyab, for advice. And when I say co-founder, he wasn't my co-founder at this point. He's
a friend of yours. He's a friend of yours at the time.
Yeah, and he's a very, in my eyes, he's a very successful entrepreneur. He started and exited many companies. He comes from the world of computing and technology, from that background. And I said, Mo, I did this. I think it was a good idea. I didn't see a business case here, but I'm now being approached by these guys. What do you think? And he told me, okay, what would you sell it for? And I told him, to be honest with you, and I thought I was aiming high. I said £5,000, and he just burst out laughing at me. And he was like, "Do you know these pharmaceutical guys spend £5,000 on Domino pizzas in one day? Like, what are you talking about?" And he said, "Is this really what you want to be doing?" I told him no. And I told him the story about how many times I've seen patients let down, how many times I've felt very backed into a corner as a doctor, wanting to give something but not knowing if the patient's got an allergy to it or not, or unnecessarily repeating blood tests or a CT scan, which the patient may have had recently elsewhere. So he told me, we can do this. There is a way around this. Have you heard of blockchain? And I'd only heard of it in the kind of Bitcoin, Ethereum, these are digital currencies, cryptocurrency sense. And the more we got talking, the more it became apparent that the idea of blockchain is just to have data put in a way that it's distributed across many, many holders of this data, which increases its level of security, increases its auditability, and increases the ability to securely know that this data was entered at this point by this individual, and we all agree on that as people that have access or hold one of these ledgers, if you will. And that's perfect, because if we think about our current system in the UK, we already trust patients to hold their records. When women are pregnant, we give them their maternity records. In case you go into labour, wherever you are up and down the country, have these maternity records with you. In case your child is unwell, have this little red book with you to show the doctor. Now, it's madness that these two systems, which are still being used today, are pen and paper. Anybody could pull some sheets out. Anybody could write in the little red book, yes, my child's had their vaccinations. Yes, my child's putting on weight, when there could be neglect there. I can't understand why we've not digitized this. So there's many ways to have digitized this, but I think using this kind of technology future-proofs what we're doing, gives it that added level of security, and really delivers on the objective of empowering the patient to have access to their own information.
And what happened next?
So what happened next is, so Mo was telling me, great, so are you going to quit your GP training? We need to get working on this. I need you full-time with me. And I told him, no, impossible. I love being a doctor. I need to continue being a doctor, and I need to finish my training.
And my parents want me to stay a doctor, please.
yeah. I think that would have been the last straw for my dad. I think he would have killed me.
Yeah.
So to be honest with you, it's all credit to the trainers I've had here in Leeds, because since the conception of the idea till its delivery, or at least progress, I have been a full-time GP trainee, and I only completed my training on Tuesday.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you very much. So I'm now a fully qualified GP. I completed the training scheme.
Well done.
Thank you very much. But it's honestly, it's all credit to my trainers, because I explained to them, this is what I'm working on. This is how big it can be. The requirement probably should mean a sabbatical, or even leaving medicine, and I don't want to do that. And the agreement I had with every trainer that I went through was, we will fully support you, just make sure you don't drop the ball. And when we talk about the ball, there's 2 exams in GP. I had to complete both of those exams whilst I was traveling. I was on a flight coming back from Hong Kong after delivering a presentation there, and I'm revising for my exam in the plane.
Wow.
Or I will be trying to practice, our kind of like OSCE exams or performance exams whilst I was sat in a cafe in Japan.
Wow.
So it's been a very surreal experience, and I am very grateful to them, and I'm very much pro this idea of treating your juniors as an adult.
Amazing. Yep.
I try to help out wherever I can. So, for example, next Tuesday, there's a new cohort of GPs which are starting in Leeds. They're the February trainees, which are just starting now. And I've been asked to come and give them a presentation about how to successfully navigate the 3-year training course. And it's very important for me to emphasize to them, just be an adult, respect the trainers, and the trainers you've got here in Leeds GP training scheme are fantastic as well, and they will support you. You just need to have a very open dialogue with them, and you'll make it through.
Amazing. what were the real difficulties in sort of juggling all these balls at the same time?
I mean, the real difficulty for me was, I wouldn't say having a split personality, but I have been flat out on the go for, I'd say, 2.5 years straight. So when everyone is going home, I'm going home to work on other things. When everyone's got their weekend, I'm off traveling. When everyone's taken their annual leave, I am filling it with conferences and business meetings and seeing lawyers or seeing accountants. And it's that kind of going back and seeing your colleagues at work who are not part of this world. And I think you'll know, Haidar, like, doctors are not the best business people in general. And when you try telling them about what you're doing, they're a bit, I wouldn't say standoffish, but they can't understand why you're doing it. Like, why are you going out of your way to try to make something for yourself? Why are you just not in the gang with the rest of us? I always try to explain to them, I am in the gang and I want to stay in the gang. And, I'm still working as a GP. I had a clinic on Friday. I've got a clinic on Monday. Yeah. But why can't you have it all? I don't understand. You just need to, be very, very efficient with your time. That's all.
Yeah. Do you think you're going to slow down, or are you just going to keep going until something happens?
I think I've had a very good team around me. So a very good team supporting me in the office. So we have our office in London. It's just opposite Waterloo Station. We've got another office in Switzerland as well. And in terms of my support from my family is unlimited. They've always had my back. And in terms of my GP practice, where I completed my training, they've asked me to stay on. So they've told me whatever hours I want, whatever days I want. So that's brilliant to have.
That's amazing. Yeah.
But
so
again,
the options are out there. So the options are out there to do whatever you want, really. Yeah.
Completely.
So it's that sort of all that hard work, but in the end, it does pay off. It does pay off totally. Did you ever feel that there were times when you thought, no, I can't carry on with this. It's too much for me.
Many times. many times. So I can give you two very good examples. One was sitting my first exam, which is called AKT, which is essentially like a multiple choice exam. And every time I sat the mock paper, or the kind of online mock paper, I failed it by a huge distance. We're talking like 10% away from the pass mark. And I failed and I failed and I failed. And my wife would keep encouraging me. And I said, look, I can't do it. Like, I'm literally, I forgot where I was traveling to. I think I was in Austria, like the weekend before the exam. And I was just like, this is not gonna pan out for me. And I was very low at that point because I didn't want, however much I love MedicalChain, I would never sacrifice my medical career. My medical career and being a doctor for me is absolutely number one.
Amazing.
I worked very, very hard and I love being a doctor, and I've seen the difference I've made to people, and that's worth more than any other success elsewhere. And I don't know how, honestly, I don't know how to tell you. I'm not one of those people that tell you, oh, I'm going to fail, then I pass. Genuinely, when I fail hard. Like when I sat my surgical exams, I failed my surgical exams 3 times until I finally passed it. And I thought, here we go again with this AKT. And somehow the only exam I ever passed was the real one, because I always failed the mock. Wow. And then another example is where I was very ready to just say, I can't do this, is I felt I had really neglected my wife for many, many months now because of all the traveling and all the doctor work, that I promised her a weekend away in Dublin. She's got one of her sisters that live in Dublin. And I said, I promise you, it's your weekend. I'm doing absolutely nothing. It's fully yours. And I went off to Dublin. And her sisters are married to these other guys. And somehow we are the best of friends. So all the brother-in-laws that are married to these group of sisters, we're very close to each other as well. So I got to Dublin, and I'd only been there for about 2 hours, I think, since I arrived. And then I get a phone call from Mo, and he goes, right, I need you in Berlin tonight. And I said, you can't do this to me. Seriously, like, you can't. And he said, no, Abdullah, there's this Chinese envoy, and it's either we go to Berlin tonight to go see them, or we're flying to China to go see them. So it's your choice. So I've even come in all my like casual holiday gear. Like, I've not come for any kind of business meeting or anything like this.
Yeah.
So even to the point, Haidar, like one of my socks had a hole in it. And I said to these guys, my brothers that were there, my brother-in-laws, I was like, look, can one of you sort me out with a shirt? Can somebody give me some socks? I need to get on a plane to Berlin now. And my wife obviously was very upset, but...
That's an understatement. I was going to say upset is probably an understatement. If that was my wife, she would have chopped something off me.
She just looked at me, and I think the good thing I have in my relationship with my wife is there are no games. There are no tactics. We're very open with each other. So obviously she's upset, but she just told me, is this really that important? I told her, I promise you it's important. If it wasn't, I wouldn't go.
You got a good in there, mate. You got a good in there, mate.
Yeah, no, I know it. I know it's the best. It's the best thing that happened to me. And that's it. I went to Berlin. It was actually a very crucial meeting for us. It made a huge difference to our outcome. And I made sure that I made it up to my wife in many other ways.
Excellent. That's an amazing story, and it just shows that even in the most difficult times, there's always a small light of hope. There's always something there that just makes you just crawl out.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I hope what I'm getting across, this running theme, that it wasn't me. You know, it's just the circumstances I was in and the kind of people I've gathered around me in my life who have helped me get to where I am. You know, they've not been obstacles for me, and I've been very fortunate with that, because I wouldn't have been able to achieve any of this stuff without everyone around me supporting me and pushing me.
And my last question to you is how do you develop that ability to allow other people to help you in your journey?
I mean, I would like to say because I'm a giver, they see how much I do for them and how much I'm there for them, then it really becomes apparent who's there to give back to you as well. And I think that's my principle, and I learned that from my parents. My parents are the biggest sacrifices. You know, they did everything for us as kids, not just as kids. They literally do it for the stranger in the street. Like the stuff my dad does, I used to, you know, in my immaturity, have a go at him and say, you know, why are you helping this person? This person's taking advantage of you. You don't even know this guy. And my dad is the most generous, kind, selfless person I've ever met. And I hope a little bit of that is rubbed off on me. And I try to treat people around me and strangers or my patients in the same kind of attitude or approach that my dad treated us. And I think you get rewarded back, because then the good people recognize that and do the same for you.
Amazing. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you today, Abdullah. I've definitely walked away with a lot of hope for all of us in this world. How can people get hold of you and your websites and so on?
Yeah, so thanks for having me, Haidar. I'm sure we could talk for hours and hours, but your listeners probably only have a half an hour drive to listen to the podcast. So anybody can email me, abdullah@medicalchain.com. Anybody can find me on LinkedIn, and I'm sure you'll have my details at the bottom of your post as well. And I am very much, you know, I'm happy to hear from anybody, but I'm especially happy to hear from students. So I always get emails from Germany or China, and somebody says, I'm working on this blockchain project, and they have these questions. Somebody says, I'm a medical student and I have this business idea. So anybody who's in a student role or in a learning mentality, I'm very, very much happy to help those people.
Thank you so much, Abdullah. It's been great.
That's a pleasure. Thanks for your time, Haidar.
Thanks for listening to this installment of the Surgical Spirit podcast. For all the latest in the world of surgical spirit, don't forget to follow on Twitter @The Third Eye Doc, and catch me on Facebook at the page The Third Eye Doctor. You can visit the website at www.thethirdeyedoctor.co.uk for more information on the work that I do. And please send us feedback and questions and suggestions for the podcast. It's always a pleasure to hear from you. I've been Dr. Haidar Al-Hakim, and I'll see you next time.